Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Horror Stories. I know many of you use these episodes to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the episodes. Story 1. I was 14 years old when it happened, although I looked older, maybe 17 or 18. People always said my face had something that made me look older than I really was. My family lived just 3 minutes away from my grandmother's house, and that night I had the entire house to myself. It was a little after 8 p.m. It was already dark, but not too late. I was on a video call with my best friend Jenna, laughing and gossiping about the latest school drama, when suddenly the doorbell rang. At first, I didn't think much of it. My parents never used the doorbell. They had the habit of knocking softly or simply letting themselves in with their keys. That made it a little strange, but not alarming. I put Jenna on hold and went to check. When I got to the door, there was no one there. My first thought was that maybe the person was outside near the gate. We had a yard with a small white fence and a gate that opened onto the lawn, and that entrance also had a doorbell. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch, feeling the cool night air brush against my skin. That's when I saw him. Behind the gate stood a man, maybe around 30 years old. He wore a torn black t-shirt, faded denim shorts, and he was barefoot. His feet were dirty, and he had an empty, lost expression on his face. For a moment, I thought he might be a homeless person or someone drunk. "Sir," I said hesitantly, not sure what to do. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted his head as if he had only just noticed the trees in our yard. Then he muttered, "I'm just looking at the trees." His voice sounded weak, like it didn't belong to him. Something about the way he said it sent a shiver down my spine. I froze, unsure of what to reply. "That's fine," I said cautiously, "but you can't just stand there." At that moment, he tried to open the latch on the gate. "Hey," I shouted. "You can't do that, sir." He stopped, surprised, and lowered his hand. For a moment, I thought he might start yelling, but he didn't. He just stared at me with that vacant look before turning around and walking away into the darkness. I locked the door and went back inside, my heart racing. I didn't even tell Jenna what had happened. When my parents came home an hour later, I had already convinced myself it was nothing, just some strange man passing by. But it didn't end there. The next night, my parents decided to go shopping after dinner. They asked if I wanted to join them, but I didn't feel like it. Instead, I invited Jenna over, and we spent the evening watching TV and snacking in the living room. Around 11 p.m., we heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps crunching on the gravel outside. I muted the TV and signaled Jenna to stay quiet. We both looked toward the window, with the curtains half drawn, as the footsteps circled the house. I leaned just enough to peek through the gap. It was him, the same man from the night before. He moved strangely, dragging his feet as if unsure of every step. He turned his head from side to side like he was searching for something, or someone. Then he stopped right in front of the window, and for the first time he seemed to notice me. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second before I yanked the curtains shut. "What's wrong?" Jenna whispered. "It's him," I replied. "The man from last night." The next thing we heard was a soft knocking on the front door. "Who is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was no immediate answer. Then we heard, "My phone is dead. Can I use yours?" "I'm sorry," I replied quickly. "I can't help you." The knocking turned into loud banging. Jenna grabbed my arm. "We have to call someone," she murmured in fear. "Yes," I said, already pulling out my phone. But before I could dial, we heard glass shatter. "Oh my God," Jenna screamed. "He's inside." We bolted upstairs and locked ourselves in my bedroom. With trembling hands, I dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "There's someone in my house," I said on the verge of tears. He broke in. "Please send someone." The operator assured me that officers were already on their way, but every second felt like an eternity. Downstairs, we could hear him moving, Heavy footsteps, the dragging of furniture across the floor, and then silence. Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. We heard officers shouting commands, followed by the sounds of a struggle and an arrest. Jenna and I stayed locked in until an officer knocked on the door and told us it was safe to come out. The man didn't resist arrest. He just stood there, motionless, with that same vacant stare, as they handcuffed him and led him to the patrol car. In the following days, the police told us what they had found out. The man was a patient from a psychiatric hospital located about 10 minutes away. He had escaped earlier that week, and they had been searching for him. "He's not violent," one of the officers assured us. "He's just disoriented." Violent or not, I couldn't get the image of that man standing at my gate, murmuring about the trees, out of my head. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without checking multiple times to make sure all the doors and windows were locked. Before moving on to the next story, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming horror stories. Your support means a lot to us, so please share these tales with your friends and family. Thank you. Story 2. I live in Los Angeles, in the suburbs. It's a quiet neighborhood, mostly inhabited by Iranian and Jewish families. The houses are large, the gardens well kept, and you always see someone jogging or walking their dog. Still, it's not unusual to hear the ghetto bird, the police helicopter, flying overhead at night. But that time it wasn't just a simple flyover. The helicopter was right above my house, its searchlight cutting through the darkness as if looking for someone or something. Inside, my wife and young son were sleeping soundly in our bedroom. The door was locked. I thought about waking her, but what would I say? I didn't want to scare her unnecessarily. Instead, I went to the safe and pulled out my Remington pump-action shotgun. I loaded it with a double-aught buckshot shell and a slug just in case. I locked the bedroom door behind me and went into the living room. The first thing I did was turn off all the lights inside the house and switch on the exterior ones. The backyard, the driveway, the porch. Everything was lit up like a stadium. I stood by the windows, shirtless, wearing only pajama pants, clutching the shotgun to my chest. The helicopter kept circling, its beam jumping between my yard, the street, and the neighboring houses. Minutes passed and nothing happened. The house felt too quiet, so quiet that I could hear my own breathing pounding in my ears. I sat down in a chair near the sliding glass door, resting the shotgun across my lap. I promised myself I'd stay awake, but slowly fatigue began to creep in. Just as my eyelids grew heavy, I saw it. A silhouette running past the sliding door, heading toward the side of the house. I jumped up, my heart hammering in my chest, and ran to the kitchen. That's when I noticed the side door to the garage was open. I froze for a few seconds, unsure of what to do. Then I tightened my grip on the shotgun and moved toward the garage. The door that led to the side yard was ajar, the doorknob turning slowly. Someone was trying to come in. That door always stuck. The humidity made it swell, so you had to push hard to open it. Whoever was outside was struggling with it, and I knew I only had seconds. I racked the shotgun, aiming at the small glass panel in the door, and shouted, "Stop." The person froze. I fumbled for the tactical flashlight mounted on the barrel, but of course the batteries were dead. My mouth went dry. Only one thought ran through my head. If he made it inside, I'd have no choice but to shoot. And if I didn't, he could overpower me easily and get straight to my family. The doorknob stopped moving. I could hear him breathing on the other side, shallow, nervous. Neither of us moved. Then the helicopter's beam swept across the yard, and for a split second I saw his face. Young, wide-eyed, terrified. He turned, looking behind him. At that moment I heard the shouts of police officers. They were coming through the side yard, flashlights cutting across the darkness. The metallic clang of the gate opening. Then chaos. Orders barked, hands grabbing the boy and slamming him to the ground. I lowered the shotgun, my hands trembling. A flashlight beam shone through the garage window. "Sir, get inside," an officer yelled. I didn't argue. I locked the garage door, went back into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hand shook so badly I spilled half of it. My ears rang, my chest burned. An hour later, the helicopter was gone, the officers had left, and the neighborhood was quiet again. I went out to shut the gate and saw some neighbors gathered, speaking in Hebrew and Farsi, trying to figure out what had happened. I just nodded without saying a word. When I went back inside, my wife stirred in bed. "Why aren't you sleeping?" she mumbled. "Insomnia," I replied. I couldn't tell her, not that night. It would have terrified her. The next day, I called the police to find out what had happened. The duty commander explained that the boy was 16 and lived in the neighborhood. His parents were wealthy, and he had no record, but they had caught him trying to break into a friend's house. When the officers arrived, he ran, abandoned his car a street away, and ended up hiding in my yard. I didn't mention the shotgun or how close I had come to pulling the trigger. The less they knew, the better. A few weeks later, something unsettling happened. It was late at night, and I was in the kitchen getting a drink when I saw the motion sensor light in the backyard switch on. I froze, staring out the window. The yard looked empty, until I noticed a shadow moving near the fence. I grabbed the shotgun again, my heart racing. Was it the same boy, or someone else? I flipped on the exterior lights, flooding the yard with brightness. The shadow vanished, but I didn't relax. I double-checked every door and window before going back to bed. That night, I barely slept. Months passed, and life started to feel normal again, until it didn't. One afternoon, I was working in the garage when I heard a noise outside, like someone trying to open the gate. I switched off the light and stood still, listening. The sound stopped, but something inside me said something was wrong. This time, I didn't grab the shotgun immediately. I wanted to see who it was first. I peeked through the small window in the garage door and saw two figures standing by the gate. One of them was fiddling with the lock. I stepped back silently and dialed 911. The operator told me to stay on the line and keep the doors locked. While I waited, I heard the gate screech as it opened. My chest tightened. I held my breath, listening as their footsteps drew closer. Suddenly, the motion sensor light in the yard turned on. The two froze. For the first time, I saw their faces. Teenagers, maybe 17 or 18. They looked at each other in panic and bolted. The police arrived minutes later, but the kids were gone. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that first boy who nearly got into my garage. What if he had come back? What if now he had brought friends? I knew I couldn't keep living like that, in constant tension. The next morning, I installed security cameras around the house, replaced every door lock, and added a second deadbolt to the garage. I even bought a new flashlight for the shotgun and made sure to check the batteries every week. Even with all that, I could never shake the feeling that something was still wrong. Story 3. It was during one of our internship months when I had to stay in a dormitory with some classmates. It wasn't luxurious at all, just a small, narrow building that seemed to have been standing for decades. The paint on the walls was peeling, and the wooden floor creaked under the lightest step. Some students who had lived there before us told strange stories, shadowy figures, ghostly footsteps, or whispers in the dark. I thought they were just trying to scare us. The first night went quietly at first. My roommate Mia went out with one of our professors to run a last-minute errand. She told me she would probably be back late and not to wait up. I didn't mind. I was exhausted after the long day and all I wanted was to crash into bed. Before going to sleep, I made sure to lock the door. I even checked it twice, turning the knob until I was sure it wouldn't move. I left the lights on, not because I believed in ghosts, but because the dorm had a strange oppressive atmosphere at night, as if the walls themselves were watching you. It must have been around 2 a.m. when I woke up, though not completely. I was in that half-asleep, half-aware state where your mind blurs the line between dreams and reality. My body felt heavy, my eyelids barely able to stay open. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and squinted to check the time. Just as I turned to pull up the blanket, I noticed it. At first, I thought it was a shadow cast by the light, but as I focused, I realized it was much darker than any normal shadow. It had a human shape. It was standing still by the door. I couldn't make out its face, but there was no doubt. There was a figure inside the room with me. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at it, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe Mia had come back early, but I hadn't heard the door open. Besides, she was taller than that thing. And then it moved. The shadow advanced toward my bed, though I couldn't tell if it was walking or floating. Its movement was unnatural, smooth, silent, as if it was gliding just above the floor. The air caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. I was completely paralyzed by a terror I had never felt before. The figure stopped at the foot of my bed, leaning over me. My half-asleep mind couldn't process what was happening. Its presence was heavy, suffocating. I couldn't see its eyes, but I felt it watching me. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, sunlight was streaming through the window. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and then I saw it. The door was open. I was absolutely certain I had locked it before going to bed. I remembered turning the knob and pulling on it to make sure it was secure, but now it was ajar. My stomach turned. I got out of bed and checked the room. Nothing was missing. My belongings were exactly where I had left them. But the door, that made no sense. Trying to shake off the unease, I got dressed and went to the dining hall, where some classmates were already gathered. At first, I didn't mention anything. Maybe I had forgotten to lock the door. Maybe it had all been my half-asleep imagination. I thought about sleep paralysis. It had to be that. Later, when Mia came back, I couldn't help but ask her, "Hey, did you come back to the room last night?" I tried to sound casual, though my voice trembled a little. She frowned. "No, I told you I'd be back late. I didn't even stop by the dorm after going out." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Are you sure? You didn't forget something and come back to grab it?" She shook her head firmly. "No. Why?" I hesitated, but I ended up telling her what had happened. The shadow, the open door, the suffocating presence. By the time I finished, my skin was crawling. Mia looked pale. "That's really disturbing," she said. Our classmates who had overheard chimed in with their own stories. One girl said she had heard someone calling her name at night, but when she checked, her room was empty. Another swore he had seen a shadow cross the hallway, even though no one else was awake. We tried to laugh it off, saying it was just our imagination, the result of exhaustion or suggestion. But deep down, I couldn't shake the certainty that what I saw, or felt, was real. That night, I asked Mia not to leave me alone again. We locked the door, checked it 3 times, and even pushed a chair against it for extra security. Even so, I could barely sleep. Every creak of the old building made me jump. Every flickering shadow from the light made my skin crawl. The rest of our stay went by without incident, but the memory of that night stayed with me. To this day, I can't explain it. Was it a dream, a trick of the light, or something entirely different? What do you think?